they view each other as competition, as enemies, if you will. And there's a lot of friction in between them. And that's where all that really frustration is erupted, is within that friction of them just not listening to each other. It's amazing how when you have such a powerful belief that you just want to be heard, but you forget to listen.
Well, why do people hate? That is the question. We're living in this world of such division and derision and so much hate. It seems to be building every year. There's so much animosity and anger between people. And what I see in the happiness front is a ton of self loathing. Why do we hate? In today's episode, I am sharing with you this incredible conversation that I had with author Dylan Rogers, who asked this question, why do we hate? And I know you're going to love to hear his perspective. He shares with us not only why people hate, but the meaning of life and the difference between survival and thrival and thriving. Why surviving and thriving and knowing the difference between the two can help us reach for greater happiness and success and combat hate. He also talks about forgiveness and what the three origins of hate are and the three fulcrums of hate. He shares with us that where there is judgment, there is a gap of understanding and how understanding relates to love. I mean, this is just such a powerful episode. He's a great, great man who really has fascinating perspective and a lot of truths behind him, and that great life experience in terms of understanding hate. So join me in welcoming Dylan Rogers. Hello, and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and I am so excited about today. Today is going to be such a great day. We are joined by author, inspirational speaker, motivator, and coach, Dylan Rogers. Welcome to the show today, Dylan.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you today. I was drawn to you by you contacted me on LinkedIn, and I was excited when I saw your website and the incredible work you're putting out into the world. And apparently your fabulous new book called Winning at Life. Tell us all about your journey and your book and your vision and mission in life.
Absolutely, man. Wow, what a story that is. So my background is in engineering. So I have a bachelor's in aerospace engineering and a master's in applied systems engineering. So when I was going through school, I was thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I got to the point where like, well, I'm good at math, so I want to do something with that. And I love space. I love the idea of traversing into outer space and just the vast unknown out there. So I ended up going for space stuff. So math, the space stuff equals aerospace engineering. So that's how I went down that road. But even going for engineering, I knew that that wasn't what I was wanting to do for the rest of my life. I knew that I wanted that mindset of an engineer, that ability to solve the most complex problems that life has to offer. But I knew I didn't want to just do the science and technology part of it. I wanted to use that ability to solve those problems to actually help people.
Mm.
So along my journey, I was looking at the world, and about 6 years ago, I was looking at the conditions of the world at that time, and I just saw a lot of hate in the world. And I just didn't know why. I'm like, why do people hate? Why does somebody just look at somebody else and from what they see, what they know about that person, have these powerful negative feelings, associations to them? And I'm like, I have to figure this out. I have to solve this problem. So I was doing my research, trying to figure it out. And to my disappointment, there's not a lot of information out there about why people hate. Most of it kind of just brushes hate off as part of human nature. It's just kind of what we do. And I didn't like that answer. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to figure out why people hate and tell the world so that we can understand this profound negative influence that the entire world deals with, that a lot of people deal with in a lot of ways. So I started doing my research and writing the book. At the time, it was called Why People Hate. But as any grand project, with any grand project, it kind of evolves over time. I realized that hate isn't some island in the middle of the ocean. It's attached to the mainland. It's attached to everything else we do in our lives. It influences everything from happiness to fulfillment to everything we do. So over time, the book evolved into what it is today, which is Winning at Life. And
Mm.
the title, the reason there is that title is because when you look at life, if you see life as a game, to win at the game of life, there are two winning conditions: to make a happy life and to create a fulfilling life. And the greatest barrier between us and winning in this life is hate. So that's where winning at life comes from. It's about the three most important concepts in our lives: happiness, fulfillment, and hate. And that's kind of how it turned into what it is today. And and it took me 6 years to write this book because of all of the really original thought processes behind it. I didn't take a perspective of, oh, let's just see what everybody else thinks and just collect their knowledge. No, I came up with real solutions that make sense. From my engineering background, the way that you approach a complex problem, you don't start with what supports this. You start with what can deny this, what can prove this wrong. And it's amazing when you start asking how is this wrong? Then everything you find that isn't wrong is actually something right, and you actually find better answers. So from that perspective, I found with fulfillment, what is the meaning of life? So to me, most people, when they think of what is the meaning to my life, they narrow their vision, their scope, their focus just on humans, just on our lives. But humanity is a part of all life, and they don't. It's almost like being in the forest. It's hard to see the whole trees and the whole forest as a whole. So I'm like, all right, what is the meaning to all life? This meaning to all life will then is fulfilled by individual life forms. So if a whole life is a system, we are a part of that system, and we have a role to play. So I'm like, all right, what is the meaning to life? And then from that perspective, how can we find meaning in our own lives? So that again is fulfillment, one of the two winning conditions of life. And then
Oh, I'm gonna pause you for a second
okay.
because you just said something so huge, that the meaning to life is fulfillment for all life forms.
So let me clarify there. So the meaning of life, it's actually, as you might probably understand, meaning of life is a huge concept, and it can be kind of difficult to explain to where in a way that everybody understands. But in the sentence, the meaning of all life is to survive. When you look at an
Mhm.
ecosystem, it's built to ideally have endless loops of survival, not necessarily for an individual life form, but for the whole ecosystem as a whole. And
Mhm.
every single piece of an ecosystem, from the trees to the grass to the animals to the bugs, everything has a role to play in keeping that ecosystem stable, which means that ideally it can cycle through life cycles and live on forever. And
Yes.
absolutely. And then as far as an individual life form within that ecosystem, their role is to contribute to the survival of the ecosystem as a whole. And when you
Yes.
take that perspective, you look at us human beings. Like, what does that mean to me? It means that our role in this whole life as a system, as a whole, as us, is to contribute to the survival of other life, contribute to other life thriving, flourishing, to give. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing too. When you give, when you truly give to other people, whether you make them happy or do whatever that is, you feel good too. So life rewards us doing our part. It's just fascinating, actually.
So when we do our part contributing to other life forms,
Mhm.
contributing to the sustainability of life on this planet, we feel good.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is the incentive to continue doing so.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, what is the best reward you can get from anything? Positive emotions, because our emotions
Mm.
are our actual experience of life. So to have that positive experience of life, that is the greatest gift you can possibly give or get. And it's just beautiful how it's set up.
And it's the only lasting reward because we can think of many short-term rewards that
Mhm.
just don't fulfill us in the long term. But you're right, that's the only lasting reward. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So that's the meaning of life arts. From life as a whole, what is our meaning? What is our role to play, our niche, if you will, in all of it that makes us fulfilled, makes us feel like we're doing our part. So that's
Cool.
that's part one of winning at life. Then part two is happiness, how to actually be happy. It's amazing.
Mm.
Everyone wants to be happy, but it seems like no one actually knows how to, right? At least that's what it seems to like a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
from all the research, all the knowledge I've gained and wisdom I've obtained from all the people in the field of happiness and positive psychology, I narrowed it down to one thing, one key to happiness, that if you have this, you will be happy. And that one thing is appreciation. If you appreciate every aspect of your life, from your body to your home to your family to your job, you will be happy. But the reason that most people can't be happy is there's something they can't appreciate. Maybe they don't like their body. Maybe their job isn't fulfilling and making them satisfied. Maybe their home is, a disappointment to them in some way because they want to give more to their family and they can't, and they feel like they can't. When we have something we can't appreciate, that's pretty much a barrier between us and being able to be happy when
Mm.
thinking about that thing.
So, is your advice then to identify what that is and find a way for appreciation in that arena?
Absolutely. So
Mm.
true appreciation is the feelings of joy and really happiness you gain from being thankful or gratitude. So, of course, we all knew gratitude is a master practice in happiness. And the result of truly being grateful for something, truly immersing and feeling like this is a gift, the result for our body experiences we experience is appreciation, is happiness. And that also has to deal with our reference points. What is your reference point to this area of life? So let's say your job. Most people, they're like, I want to make more money. Well, if you want to make more money, most of the time they have their reference points to something more than what they have now. And when you're like, I need more to be happy, and you have less, that makes you feel bad in some way. That's where we experience negative emotions. But if we're like, hey, it doesn't matter how much money I make, as long as I have my beautiful family around me, as long as I have a home that I can love within and just cherish, then that's enough for me. And just that flip of perspective. I mean, you can have the same things, but as a matter of what you're referring to, your perspective, that's what sets you up for happiness or not.
I love that. And one of the key aspects that you just touched on is feeling happy. I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with me, Dylan, but I think so often we practice not feeling. How
Mhm,
to not, because things feel painful and we don't want to feel them. So we
mhm,
train ourselves to stop feeling. Or
mhm,
even when we ask ourselves, what are you grateful for? It's very easy to quickly rattle off a list of things, but not take the time to sit and actually feel it
mhm.
and allow ourselves to fully feel the appreciation. And I love that you use the word appreciation, because for me, that harnesses a value beyond gratitude. You can just say thank you for something, but to really appreciate it means to feel it with your whole soul and body.
100%. I love that you like clarified that. So 100% appreciation is the actual experience you get from truly being grateful. So I'm actually currently also in process of creating what I call the RAM model, RAM, which is the
Mm.
Rogers Advanced Model for Human Motivation. And basically, I break it down into there's two foundational human motivations. Period: surviving and thriving. All human behaviors support one or both of these. So most of us, what we call negative beliefs, it makes us feel bad. Well, really, they're
Mm.
constructed to help us survive. And for those moments to where we don't actually stop and feel it, there's some. I don't think there's any sort of such thing as a negative belief. I only think there's limiting beliefs, beliefs that limit us from really thriving in life, experience the fulfillment and happiness. And when we somehow don't feel like we can thrive in life, we there's these defense mechanisms within us that actually are tailored to help us survive. Because if we're so dwelling on I can't thrive, then it actually inhibits our ability to even survive. So all human behaviors, all emotions, there is a cause to it. There's a reason. There is a purpose behind it, and there's no, let me clarify. There's a positive purpose behind it. Even anxiety and depression, there is a reason it's there, and that's to help us survive in some way.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love the words you chose in terms of motivation, either surviving or thriving, because often we think of motivators as either being pain or pleasure.
Mhm.
But you're right, it falls so much more beautifully into that category of surviving, because the pain, the avoidance of pain, is just to allow you to survive.
Mhm. Absolutely, and this actually builds upon the meaning of life, taking a step back real quick, is
Absolutely,
yeah,
beautifully.
absolutely, yeah, so the meaning of all life, again, is to survive. Because as long as life exists on in the universe, on this planet, it has the ability we have the ability to experience happiness, fulfillment, we have the ability to grow and thrive, and so that's survival. And when you look at it, a beautiful aspect of life, and it is not just built to help us survive, but also to thrive. There's a reason we like entertainment. There's a reason we want to go out and thrive in life and live longer and give more, is because life thrives when we thrive as an individual. And it's just beautiful how it works, because surviving is about self-preservation, is about us having being around. But thriving is about contributing, both to
Mm.
no, contributing. When you contribute to someone else, that is contribution. That is where you get fulfillment. When you contribute to yourself and your health and your wellness and your ability to contribute to others, that's where happiness comes in. So fulfillment and happiness is within the thriving aspect, while survival, that's within that, self-preservation. We can't thrive unless we do survive. So that survival is actually usually the more powerful motivational force, because we can't thrive again until we survive. So that it's usually more powerful.
And it also speaks to that age-old question about serving. Serving feels so good, as you were mentioning, and
Mhm.
what so many of the greats have told us, and that's the key to happiness is serving. And yet, when we serve too much, we can tear ourselves down and not feel the satisfaction because we're burning ourselves to the ground.
Mhm.
So many of our beautiful colleagues in healthcare find this. They dedicate their whole lives to serving others
Mhm.
and yet feel unfulfilled. But what you're touching on here is the other key, which is survival.
Mhm.
And in order to survive, you have to take care of yourself.
Absolutely, 100%. If you just give, 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 and don't give enough to yourself, then one, it's hard to be happy, because again, happiness is self contribution. It's giving to yourself. It's taking the moment to really feel gratitude and feel those positive emotions. And again, to thrive, you must first be surviving. You must first feel like in some way you can continuously survive as an individual. And when you're so, it's wild when so people have such big hearts and they're so focused on giving. I
Mhm.
think it's beautiful, but unfortunately, a lot of times they sacrifice their own ability to be happy because they're so focused on making other people happy. And it's beautiful, but it's unfortunate because you can have both. There's a wonderful quote. I forget his name. He was a comedian, Fred Allen. Fred Allen. He said, "No." I'm going to paraphrase here, but it's but essentially, you know, life is difficult, and a lot of people, they don't feel like they can be happy and fulfilled in some way. And again, this is paraphrasing, but if you live life right, you only need one life. So if you live life right, if you set yourself up for happiness, contribution, fulfillment, all these positive emotions, if you set yourself up to thrive in life, then you only need one life, because you'll give everything you need to give, and you'll feel fulfilled, and the world will be better because of it. And to me, I feel like the greatest contribution you can give to the world is to help other people have more happy and fulfilled lives. And for me specifically, as I said, why my book, Winning at Life, how it started is why people hate, and trying to inform people why hate, why we do hate. Because I see hate as the greatest barrier between us and living fulfilled and happy lives, both as an individual and as a humanity. And one of the biggest reasons that hate is so rampant, so much present around the world, is because not a lot of people think it's an actual problem. And if you don't think it's a problem, you're not going to try to find solutions to it. And that's both on an individual level and a societal level.
Okay, so what have you found? Why do we hate? Why is this such a prevalent part of really all societies, or at least that I know of, most societies in the world?
Absolutely. So hate is actually latched on. This is like, again, the RAM model is beautifully
Mm.
kind of encapsulate this. Hate is actually latched on our ability to survive, and
Yeah.
it's self-preservation. So how I see hate as a manifestation of pain. Where there is hate, there is a lot of pain. And when you remove the hate, you remove a lot of the pain that comes with it. So for me in my own life, before I actually dive into why people hate, a quick story. For me in my life, self-hate some is was has actually been had a huge impact on my life. Not my
Mm.
own self-hate, but my father's. So my father, he had a really rough life. He actually struggled throughout his entire life. He had 4 dads, his little not to get into too much detail, but he went through a lot of pain in his childhood. And to get through that pain, he found substances to help him through it. Even in middle school, he had a bottle of Jack in the locker. At middle school, he had a bottle of Jack in the locker, would take swigs in between classes.
Wow.
It's not something he found in adulthood. It's something he found in childhood just to get by. So throughout my life, there was been like he would get over it and then slowly kind of go back into whatever substance it was. And when he was under the influence of some substance, he would do things that he would regret. And then when he was sober again, he would hate himself for it. He'd feel so bad about it. And the only way he knew how to deal with that was through substances. So this negative feedback loop continues. And if he just could forgive himself, if he just could find a way to release his own self-hate about his life, then me and my family wouldn't have gone through so much pain. So I
Yeah.
view that if we release hate both between individuals and within ourselves, we've removed the pain that it causes in ourselves and in the environment around us.
Mm.
So
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful story too, and I think one that so many people can relate to. I think especially when we talk about substance abuse, what we imagine is that there's something wrong with us, that we're broken in some way. But really what you're saying is it's just a survival mechanism of challenging us to handle the pain. uh, and maybe not a functional one, not a sustainable one, not one that's serving us, but it's just our way of trying to survive.
Absolutely. In a lot of ways, it really is our way of trying to survive. And the the um the beautiful thing about, I wouldn't necessarily say it's beautiful, but the fascinating thing about us trying to survive in those situations is that those coping mechanisms, the way that we go to alcohol or substances,
Mm.
we know how to deal with those things. So we're confident in our ability to survive if we go to substances and alcohol and stuff like that. But a lot of times we don't know if we like go down this different path of changing what will lie before us. So we take the path that we've always known that we have proven to survive through because we're still alive, rather than the unknown path that we don't know if we'll survive through. That's kind of how the
Yeah,
brain works.
too scary.
It's too scary, 100%. And how I like to view how the brain works is the brain is built to help us survive. It is not there to help us thrive or be happy. So the brain, what it does is focuses on the negatives because bad things equal potential danger equals potential death. And no,
Mhm.
if you die, you don't survive. So our brain has to focus on these negative things to help us survive. It's unfortunate, but again, unless we survive, we cannot thrive. So that's the more powerful motivational force within us. And it's an unfortunate, again, powerful motivational force, but again, there's a positive intent behind it. All our motivations, all our behaviors, all our beliefs have a positive intent behind it. And it's unfortunate how they usually, again, limit us or result in negative outcomes, destroying ourselves or destroying the people around us.
Oh, and in there's also, you just illuminated something so beautifully, is that it is a natural part of survival. So in there can be forgiveness as well. And if we can insert that forgiveness in that negative feedback loop, we can somehow break it.
Absolutely, 100%. And taking that, I'm actually going to lead into why people hate. So,
Please.
absolutely. So there's two groups I'll say about why people hate. There's an origin where it starts, but just because something starts doesn't mean it continues. So there's a reason it continues in our lives, what I call a fulcrum. So fulcrum is the place where a lever rests on a wall. It's a piece of the wall, a piece of something within us that is latched onto. So there are three origins of hate and three fulcrums of hate. So the origins of hate. The first origin is hate taught by people of close relation, our role models, whether that's a family member, whether that's a friend, a brother, sister, somebody in our life that has an influence on us has taught us, hey, this is how the world works and this is what we believe. And that's how you pick it up. It's unfortunate, but that's a huge reason why a lot of people pick up our hates is we're taught by somebody close to us, somebody that we look to teach us the ways of the world. And unfortunately, they teach us what they believe how the world works. And if they hate, then unfortunately, so do we in a lot of cases. So
Mm.
that's the first origin of hate taught by others. The second is derived from negative experiences. So our negative experiences, our traumas and the tragedies within our lives that have such a negative impact on us, we associate that pain with some trait of the event. If
Mm.
you look at the being mugged, for example. So if you're walking down the street at night, you're being mugged. That's a horrific event. That's a trauma.
Mm.
And what you can associate that pain to is a few different things. It could be towards walking down the street at night. It could be walking down the street maybe by yourself. It could be to some trait of the person who's responsible, whether they have
Yeah.
tattoos, whether no, their race, unfortunately, is a one that people associate a lot of that stuff to, the religion, whatever it might be. We associate the pain to some cause, and to our brain, that's like, hey, this pain was associated to this cause, so this cause results in pain. And unfortunately, we make those negative associations, and that results in a lot of hates throughout the world. So that's number two. And then number three, hate derived from conflicting beliefs. Our
Mm.
beliefs, the most powerful, influential forces in our entire lives, have a powerful influence on our lives. They reflect how we act. They reflect how we think. They reflect how we speak. They reflect our experiences in the world. And if we have a conflicting belief, if we are so powerfully attached to a belief, and somebody comes with an opposition, we tend to be defensive. We tend to be like, no, you're wrong. This is how it is. And that creates a friction between the two beliefs. And over time, that friction gets heated up and intensifies. So just look at the polar ends of a political party, for example. It's amazing how one end hates the other end, and likewise, because they view each other as competition, as enemies, if you will. And there's a lot of friction in between them. And that's where all that really frustration is erupted, is within that friction of them just not listening to each other. It's amazing how when you have such a powerful belief that you just want to be heard, but you forget to listen. And
Oh, beautiful. You just want to be heard, but you forget to listen. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you didn't get into business to be miserable. The problem is that people feel that if their business gets busier, if they start becoming more successful, that happiness will eventually set in. But it can actually get worse. This is why I created the Business of Happiness Prosperity Coaching. In this one-on-one coaching, we look at how to redefine success on your terms and re-find the joy and the passion in your dream. Visit me at thebizofhappiness.com and become the happiest business owner you know. And also compounding on these, I can see of these three origins you've so beautifully highlighted for us. You can see how if you had a little bit of each of these, your hate gets worse. So if you grew up with a certain standard of hate or belief system, or even, I can imagine that's a survival mechanism as well. You're taught to believe that this is how you're going to survive. And then something traumatic happens to you. There's evidence supporting it if it involves someone who you've already established a belief system of hatred around. And then you get into a community where maybe there's this disparity and fear steps in. Maybe I was wrong all this time, so you hate even more. I can see how it can just compound on top of itself.
Absolutely. I love that. They can stack for sure because, again, any beliefs, they can become more powerful with the more evidence we have to support it. And unfortunately, even negative beliefs, not negative beliefs, but limiting beliefs.
Limiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Beliefs that unfortunately result in negative results, but they're not at their foundation. They're positive in some way. They're there to support us. Even they can be built to have more negative associations to somebody else. And you're actually a step ahead of me there. And that's pretty awesome. Now jumping into the fulcrums of hate. You mentioned fear, and that's the last one, but I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 here.
Sure.
So the first fulcrum of hate, the first reason that hate sticks around in our life and doesn't just slip away, is misunderstanding. When we don't understand somebody's intention, their perspective, where they're coming from, we can't open an avenue of communication between each other. I mean, so many times somebody hurts us or their actions reflect negative on us in some way. And we feel like, oh, they've insulted me and they've whatever it means to you, that's the result. So if they feel like they've done that to hurt you, then that's what you're going to assume. That's the association you make to it. So you feel like this person is hurting me, I'm going to hate that person. And it's amazing when you just step forward and find clarity, when you actually ask about it, how the result is never to really hurt you unless there's the hate that it's derived from. That's for a completely different reason. So maybe somebody ignored you. Like if you're walking down the hallway and you're like, hey, to somebody, and they just completely ignore you and walk past you, you can be like, what was that? Did they not like me? Did I do something wrong? And you have these associations to it. And if you just ask them, maybe later on in the day, they're like, oh yeah, I had a lot on my mind, my cat died or whatever it might be. Once you build an understanding, you can create that connection. But if you don't understand them, it's amazing what fills that gap between us. And then that's the number one, misunderstanding. 2 is repudiation. A big word, but I love the concept. So a repudiation is not just not understanding somebody, but refusing to understand someone. Saying, hey, this is how the world works. If you think differently, that's on you, but this is how the world works. So repudiation is basically you putting up a blockade, a shield between you and somebody else. So you refuse to listen. I mean, with misunderstanding, you could have either just ignorance, which is purely the absence of knowledge. But a lot of people think that ignorance means you can't understand, but that's not what it means. Ignorance only means that you don't have the adequate information to understand. Or 2, you have misinformation. So somebody said, oh yeah, this was their intent. Well, it really wasn't. So that misinformation can build bridges of hate or negative emotions between you that is unfortunate, that is built upon misunderstanding. So again, that's one. But 2, repudiation, that's saying, hey, it's pretty much submitting to a closed mindset, saying, hey, within this bubble, this is how the world works. I'm going to live within this bubble. Anything outside's wrong. This bubble is correct. And unfortunately, when you live with a closed mindset, you have a closed perspective on life. Thomas Dewar, I love this quote by him. He's an international successful author and whiskey distiller. He wrote, minds are like parachutes. They only function when they're open. And
Love it.
it's beautiful because it's just true on so many different levels. And with repudiation, we close off our minds to a closed mindset. We don't open it up to allow other people to come in and touch us, to feel us, to change our lives in a positive way. And it's unfortunate, but it's again aspect of survival. And
Mm,
then three, the last fulcrum of hate is fear. And this is the
mm,
one most prominent in people's lives because what we fear, I mean, just think about if you fear a snake, for example, anytime you see a snake, these negative emotions erupt within you. And that's when the three responses by psychology are defined: fight, flight, or freeze. That's when you react purely to survive, or you freeze and don't do anything because you don't know what to do. So purely from hating this thing, you have this powerful negative emotion erupt within you. And that is difficult to overcome. It's so difficult to overcome. But the beautiful thing about any of these fulcrums of hate, the solution to all of them is understanding. More specifically between people, empathy. When you can feel how somebody else feels, it's amazing how the hate slips away. By taking a step towards a snake, or maybe holding a snake, you realize that this thing is not as bad as you thought it was. That in reality, snakes are more afraid of you than you are of them. And just when you open up an avenue of understanding, hate slips away. And however, the reason that most people don't do it is because it's difficult. It's difficult to step up to your fears. It's difficult to overcome those survival mechanisms and actually face them in order to thrive in life. But to thrive, to be happy, to be fulfilled, we need to.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I think you're spot on. I mean, it makes so much sense. And it also makes so much sense on why we're so afraid to. It's like traveling out into into the universe beyond our earth. We don't know what's on the other side. If you haven't allowed yourself in your whole life to see and feel that understanding, and it feels scary.
It's so scary. It's
Yeah.
one of those things too, built into our survival mechanism. We know that this path isn't good for us, but even with it not being good for us, we still have survived because why? We're still alive today. This other path, it might be better, but we don't know if it's going to be better because it could potentially be worse. We might not be able to survive. So avoid that. And this is the way to continuously survive, is that old path. It might be negative, but we're still not be destructive in some way, but it's still, proven for us to survive. And when I think of the term hate, whatever you hate, whether it's a person, a thing, or traffic, whatever it is, there is a destructive motivational force behind it. What you hate, you want to be removed from the world.
Mm,
While on the other end, what you love, you want to support, you want to help thrive. Hate is the opposite of love.
mm,
And because what we love, we want to grow and thrive, for protect, for support. But what we hate, we want to remove and destroy. And it's just wild how love is the motivational force behind thriving. There is one force that makes thriving a greater priority than surviving, that makes thriving more powerful than surviving, and that's love. A mother will sacrifice her life to protect her child because love is the strongest motivational force in the world, because it says, hey, no, I don't care about surviving. I want to thrive. And thriving means this person I love gets to survive. This person I love gets to live on and maybe be happy themselves. And it's just beautiful how it all comes together.
absolutely. And love is a part of understanding.
Absolutely, because you can't love someone unless you understand them to some extent. I mean, you could love all people, but that requires you to understand that all people are good in some way. There's some positive aspect to it. When you say that, and when somebody says that they hate the world, they've associated these powerful negative emotions to the entire world around them. And these entire negative associate, yeah, everything. And in that state of thinking some negative, which means harm or destruction, that it's hard to love what you think will harm you.
Yeah.
But when you understand that, hey, this person cares for me, this person will bring me fulfillment and happiness and all these different positive emotions, that's where love is grown and supported. When you understand that, hey, we are here to contribute to one another, not to harm one another, that's when you can
Mm.
truly love the world around you and love life.
This is such a timely conversation at a time in our reality in America where there's so much division and so much hatred and so much fear.
Mhm.
And whenever we have this conversation with one another of extending understanding to somebody who you've held so much animosity towards in the past, there's that fear that steps in. But what if they want to hurt me? But what if I start feeling close to them and then they turn around and hurt me? And
Mhm.
what you're saying is that fear is natural, but the only way to combat it is with love.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
it's so when you think about the most successful people in the world, they're the ones who are able to overcome their fears, the obstacles in the way, and all those things really more than anybody else, because what lies on the other side of fear is a grander life ahead. But unfortunately, you have to take that step into ever seen Indiana Jones? I forget which one it is, but basically that invisible bridge he has to step on. Sometimes you have to
Yes.
take a leap of faith and just say, hey, a greater life lives on the other side, lies on the other side. And that leap is it's so important, but it's so difficult because, again, that survival mechanism. If I step and there's nothing there, I will die. So sometimes you have to take a step. And of course, that's an extreme example, but even applying for a job. Oh, if I get rejected, then I'll feel bad. Or if I get it, then I might not be able to fulfill those duties. I might not be good at it. So then people will see me in a negative way. So then I'll get fired and then I have no job and I won't be able to support my family. So no matter what motivation, what behavior, what emotion you have, it is supporting you in some way. It is protecting your ability to survive or supporting your ability to thrive, no matter what it is.
I'd love to know in your exploration and studying this, which it's so cool. I love your perspective. As you've been going through this journey, what have you learned about yourself in terms of hatred?
So for me, I've been gifted my life, I'll say. Anytime I've judged somebody else, I've been proven to be wrong. And I love that. And because it takes me back to my perspective, what the perspective I've won. And for me, my perspective is not to judge somebody, because where there is judgment, there is a gap between us and understanding. So to
Mm,
understand somebody, you have to try to find information to support a conclusion. With judgment, you automatically come to a conclusion. You don't try to take it step by step to find that evidence. You automatically come to a conclusion. So it actually prevents us from understanding them. And for me, my entire philosophy, my entire focus on life is to understand people. I thankfully am gifted with the ability to understand people. And one of those aspects is because I don't judge people, because I know even if somebody did a bad thing, even if somebody hurt somebody else, there's a reason behind it. All emotions and behaviors, they have a positive reason underneath it. And to me, as long as I come from the perspective of understanding people, understanding what they're doing, why they're doing it, I can help them change that into something what they want more, something they want better, to have a happier, more fulfilled life, whatever it might be. But you can't find a solution to something you don't understand. And to understand, you have to come from the perspective of wanting to understand, curiosity. Because
mm,
through curiosity, through that really it's a pull towards getting the information to understand how it works. That's where you find clarity on how it works, and that's where you find the best solutions. And to me, I don't hate anybody. And of course, there's fears and insecurities that grow within me. But I know at the most foundational belief I have is that I will support others. My life is meant to help people thrive and be happy in life, and to remove all those negative aspects in the way. To remove hate is just that is my meaning in life, my personal meaning in life, my number one. So when I think of meaning in life, there's not just one like, hey, you're here to raise a family and that's it. No, there's a cascade of things that we do. But for me, number one is to play a part in removing the vast amount of hate in the world. Because again, when you remove hate, you remove pain. And when you remove pain, it's amazing how many beautiful, positive things start to manifest.
beautiful. Beautiful. I want to just highlight, you said something there that I just want to highlight, and that is where there is judgment, there's a gap in understanding. And
Mhm.
that by tucking into our curiosity, we can overcome that and find the courage to reach for that understanding. I love that. I love
Absolutely,
that. Mm,
absolutely. And on the other side of that, when we feel judged, it's not a good feeling. It's feeling like they're looking for something wrong in us. They're looking for a way to make us wrong in some
yes.
way. When we feel judged, it's not a good feeling. So on the other end of it, when we feel like somebody is trying to understand somebody, it builds a bridge, a two-way connection between us that builds a
Mm,
relationship. And through our relationships, we can make a more positive influence on the world around us. The more people we love, the more people we help, the more people we build relationships with, the more we do and construct relationships and positive associations with the world around us, the more positive influence we have on the world around us. And I see it as a ripple effect. You help one person see the world in a more beautiful, constructive light. They help one more, they help one more. And just like a ripple effect, your positive influence spreads to the world around us. And a lot of people, they view their impact on the world. They're like, oh, I haven't done much. Well, let's say this. So maybe you were driving down the road and you saw somebody stuck on the side of the road. They had a flat tire. If you stop and help them, change their flat tire, maybe they're going to an interview. Maybe because you helped them, they're able to make it on time. Maybe because they made it on time, they landed the job, and then that led them to more and more success in their future. And maybe because of that event in the future, they helped 1 million people. Well, without even knowing, you contributed to helping 1 million people. Why? Because you did something positive for one person. And it's just amazing how the world is connected in that way.
Oh, love it, Dylan. I love it. Well, I feel empowered because I know that by bringing you on this podcast, I'm bringing your book to 1 million people. And I'm so excited to share this with my audience. So tell us about where we can find Winning at Life, because I'm guessing all these precious nuggets are tucked into the pages of your new book.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So Winning at Life is actually releasing on July 11th, 2022 on Amazon. And I'm so thrilled for it. And if you can find it through my website, dylan-rogers.com. And since Dylan and Rogers have multiple spellings, I'll just spell it out real quick.
Please.
dylan-rogers.com. And you can find it through there. And I'm also a speaker. I love to go out and change people's lives through speaking to them, because when you talk to somebody and they listen, again, you build that relationships, you build that avenue of understanding. And that's when you can change somebody's lives for the better. Maybe if it's one little seed that you plant, it's still one positive seed that could set their life in a new direction. And I love the thought of it. So speaking, being an author, writing things, and coaching. And again, I'm actually working right now on this RAM model, this Rogers Advanced Model for Human Motivation that explains all human motivation. And I want to pretty much build it and ideally publish it. I don't know how to do that yet. I've never published a scientific paper before, but that's another avenue I'm going to go down. But I'm just excited because for me, throughout my life, I've been through a lot of pain. And through that pain, I found growth. And pain can either be seen as an obstacle to where it brings you down, or as an obstacle to where when you overcome it, you grow and develop in some way. And to me, from all of my challenges and experiences in life, not to get into too much nitty-gritty detail right now, but I've developed the most powerful belief that you can have. And that is, just because it's never been done in human history doesn't mean I can't do it. And that's not saying I'm better than anybody else. I actually don't think anyone is better or worse than anybody else, because we all grow up in different environments, embracing different cultures, learning different lessons. We all grow up in different ways. So we're all unique, and we don't compare to each other, because just what is Einstein's quote? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its entire life thinking it's stupid. Because of and that's the beautiful thing about it. We're all different. We have our own roles in the world, our own unique gifts. And this is mine to help people, to help inform people why humanity hates, how we can be happy and fulfilled, why we're here, and to play a part in really bringing people together. And that's what I'm here for. And I just appreciate people like you bringing happiness to everybody else, making podcasts and avenues of communication like this to actually have that positive impact on others, because that truly does make a difference.
Oh, your passion and your energy just oozes out of you. I'm so inspired just in your presence. So thank you for all that you do, Dylan.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here.
Before you leave us, I'd love to know, what is your definition of happiness?
That's a fantastic question. I love questions like that. My definition of happiness is the ability to experience such joy and fulfillment and really positive emotions within yourself that it radiates to other people around you, to where you're so positive and really you feel it to such a magnitude that the people around you become happier because of it. That is true happiness.
You're doing it, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Doing it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so inspired by you, and I cannot wait to get my hands on your book on July 11th.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining us here today. And you heard it. When you feel great, that's when you can do good things in this world. Bye-bye.